Welcome to the Cross the Line podcast. My name is Carlos Smith, and today is a very special episode. It is great to be back. Before we get started, I want to say thank you to all of our supporters. By the time this interview is released, I made an announcement earlier. I'll be making an announcement on social media, but for everybody, for the first time, for the second time actually, we will be headed to Los Angeles, California, December the 15th through December the 20th. That's a special announcement. We'll be doing some interviews with comedians at the Ice House Lab Comedy Club. Also, we'll have some other entrepreneurs as well, so stay tuned for more details. But thank you to all our supporters, and hopefully you guys will support us as we continue to follow our journey. Today we have a very special guest with us today. This interview has been a couple of months in the making, 2 or 3 months in the making. I know we've both been really busy. When it first started, when I first reached out, I was actually just getting started, just signed a deal to do some work with South Carolina State. Then I've been doing some work with the Charlotte Hornets as well. So it's been a few months in the making, but we're finally here.
We're here.
Absolutely. So I have with me today retired CW2, the founder of Foresight Industries, and the founder of Sheenapreneur, Miss Sheena Parker. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you so much. Yes, a few months, but we're finally here.
Absolutely. it took a lot of time. But like I say, it's always, I never like to rush anything. It happens when it's supposed to happen.
Agreed.
And I'm glad we were able to, get this together, because I was like, man, hopefully she remembers that I reached out to her and she's not too busy. So I know I wanted to make sure we were able to, find a location and get everything squared away. So thank you again for taking the time to sit with me.
No, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So kind of just starting out, I always love to, see what entrepreneurs have become, but to me, it's always more important to just kind of like follow somebody's journey of like what they went through to get to where they are, because who you become in that process is very important to your success. So we're definitely going to get into your story like entrepreneurship, but kind of just giving people like a little backstory about yourself. Where are you originally from?
I'm originally from Brockton, Massachusetts.
Okay.
No one knows where that is. So if
No clue.
So if you ever heard of Cape Cod, that's where the Kennedys are from. We're about 20 minutes north of Cape Cod. So 20 minutes south of Boston, 20 minutes north of Cape Cod for a reference point. It's a very small city. It used to be a factory city that all the factories closed down, and then you're left with this city where no one can get a job. So essentially, when you think of Massachusetts, people think Boston and it's rich and all this stuff. No, that wasn't my reality. So really small city.
How would you describe yourself, growing up in your early childhood? How would you describe yourself with your personality?
I think I was always super ambitious. You think about things when you're going through them. I have a very clear recollection of how my mental state was during that time, luckily. So I just was always ambitious. I never knew why, because I had a very, very troubling childhood. So I was just always trying to fix things, always trying to hustle money. I don't know where it came from. There was nobody in my family that did anything remotely close to business. So I just was like, I need money, so I'm going to sell this baseball card or whatever. Like I was just always looking for a way to make it out without even knowing I was trying to make it out per se.
And for most of the interviews that I do, a lot of times, and I've said this before, most of the time, a lot of people that come from family entrepreneurs, then that's what they see growing up. So that's what they choose to do. And like my background was a 9-to-5 family. So I saw that. But once I got into the workforce, I was like, I don't really.
This ain't me.
This ain't exactly. Like I like being able to create things. So it kind of, not saying that it's impossible to do, but it's like when you see something growing up, it's kind of like that's what you try to go, you follow tradition, and that's what you're supposed to do.
Right.
But for you, so you didn't see anybody as an entrepreneur.
No one even had a job. Like everybody was on public assistance. Like getting on public assistance was the goal. That was it. So I tell my kids I'm from Jupiter because I have no idea why I thought the way I thought, why I fixed things. Like I thought I was going to be like some sort of mechanic. I didn't know that you could fix computers and fix, I was just doing these things. But the closest thing that I had ever heard of was like, I'm probably going to be a mechanic because I fix things. So it was just, the only one that had a job, my great aunt, she worked in a factory for like 40 years. That was it. No one else had a job. So I don't know if it was TV or what it was, but I just didn't see anything that led me to the paths that I went.
So did your family have any kind of goals or expectations for you growing up, or did they expect you to kind of like, follow suit and just
I guess because I was always so ambitious, like my grandmother raised me. So my grandmother and my grandmother's sister, who was my great aunt who worked in the factory, they used to just always say, they did give me encouragement. You're so smart. You're going to be someone. That was basically the only, as far as that would go. But they didn't have a path. They didn't have a path for me because they didn't have a path themselves. Like my grandmother had a 4th grade education. So her thing was like graduate from high school. That was it. It wasn't anything, what are you going to do with your future? It was just a dream of hers to graduate from high school. So there was no other thing that I could really think about.
Did school was school something of interest to you, or was it something that you felt like was kind of forcing? It's like you just had to, just go. Of course, education is important.
Yeah.
To a certain point, you have to go. But did you feel like were you like one of those students that was enthused about, going to school, getting an education? Or
So I had about 3 tiers of school as far as my feelings about it. I was a straight A student in elementary school, but I was so shy. Like I was almost mute at one point because I was so shy, and I used to get bullied in elementary school to where I was embarrassed of my grades. So sometimes I would purposefully, it's so crazy when you think about it now, but like we used to have to like read our grades out loud and stuff like that in school. And so I would be embarrassed because I would get more bullied for having good grades, but it came naturally to me. And then in middle school, you start acting crazy. So I wasn't acting crazy, but it was just different. And then in high school, I was a horrific student. Like I never went to school. I was the worst. Besides getting in trouble, like I literally, like the class list, they have the rank like your top of your class. So I was so low on the list that I was like the last person that was still in school. Like everyone else had already been kicked out of school. That I was at the bottom of the list. That's why like education is important, but it's more about learning for me. Like I even tell my kids, I hated school more than anybody. So I get it, but you still got to get through it.
Absolutely.
So no, I I wasn't a straight A student in high school. I barely made it out, but
Did you have was there anything that piqued your interest in school, like that kind of made you feel like, did you have an idea of like what you wanted to do after school? Like what kind of job or anything?
Not really. I mean, I just knew I was going to get out of, at that point I was in Framingham, Massachusetts, which, it was an all white high school. And so they had to bus in kids from Boston in order to make the school more diverse. So I wasn't with them because I came to that school in 8th grade. I came to that middle school in 8th grade and then on to the high school. So I wasn't with that group. And then you had rich white kids. I wasn't with them. So it was kind of like I was working 2 jobs, had no...
In high school, 2 jobs?
Mm-hmm.
Man.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
My mother was on drugs. So, there's a whole element of that. Yes. And I had a lot of siblings. But it was like, I knew I had to get out of that. So I didn't know what that looked like. It was like, okay, go to college. But, I never really knew what I was going to do. I just knew I wasn't going to stay in that situation. So there was no plan. It was just like, I got to figure out a way to get out of here.
Right.
Yeah.
Like when I went to college, I always said when I went to college, I at the time I really didn't know what I wanted to do. Yeah. I just know they used to take us in high school to different like career fairs and those college fairs where you show you the different schools. I knew for a fact I wasn't ready to go to work right away, and I knew I didn't. Me personally, like my dad, he served a little bit of time in the army. My uncle did as well. But I knew I didn't want to go because the first thing that came to my mind is, when you see movies like, oh, you got to go fight. Yeah. That's the first thing. I'm like, man, of course. That's not for me. So I was like, well, I know if I go to college. And then when you kind of get influenced. Like I remember you see movies on TV when you see these movies, these guys or young kids in college, you see the party and
they having the time of their life.
Yeah, so you kind of get an idea like
war or party.
Exactly.
I'll go with the party.
And you get the idea of like, man, that's what college is like. Man, I can't wait to go. But it's a lot more that comes with. Yes, it's a lot of partying. It's a lot of temptation. Don't get me wrong. But you still have to understand what you're there for and the reason behind it. So I already knew going to work right away, which I did work a couple of jobs when I was in college. I didn't work full time, and I knew I didn't want to go to the army. So I was like, well, college would give me at least 4 more years to kind of like figure it out, just buy some more time. Gotcha. But I didn't. It's time when I got there, I was just living, just partying all the time. So, but as I went on, I kind of figured it out. But for you, like right after high school, like what initially was that next move for you?
I went to college. I went to community college.
Okay.
That was just the easy. I don't even remember any of that moment. I just know I was in Framingham. I got into a big fight with my mom on the day of my graduation, and then I moved back to Brockton with my grandmother. Mm-hmm. So I was like, well, shoot, I might as well go to college, you know. So I just kind of started on that. I was working two jobs again and going to school. And very, very long story short, fast forward, I've always been a person that felt like I was not ever fulfilled with the things that I was doing. So I'm like, okay, this is cool. And all my friends that I had before I left and went to Framingham, now we're graduated from high school. Some of them didn't graduate, you know, some perished in one way or another. Mm-hmm. And then, you know, me going to college was like this big deal because nobody even went to community college. And so, you know, I finished the year, lost one of my two jobs, and then my mom was like, you need to go to the unemployment office and get money for the job that you lost. And I'm like, okay. And I go, and then I meet a recruiter. I never thought about the military. I never even thought about it's so ironic when you know, hindsight because I didn't even correlate like the war with the military. Like I wasn't like, when I saw a recruiter, I wasn't like, oh Lord, he's gonna try to bring me to war. It didn't connect. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, he got to talking, and he had a stutter, and I think because he had a stutter, it made me want to listen to him more. Mm-hmm. So then fast forward 20 years military. So it was never, I would just kind of seem like I stumbled into stuff. It never was a plan. I just know I wanted to do something.
Did that feel like it was an escape to get away from your environment, you know, going into the military?
And luckily, you know, because once you start telling people about you're going to do something, you have people who are discouraging you. You have people who can encourage you. Everyone encouraged me. I don't know if it was some kind of divine, even my friends, they're like, yeah, you need to go so you can get out of here. My grandmother was against it a little, but she was like, that'll be, you know, after I talked to her, she's like, that'll be good for you because at least you'll be, you know, on a path to something productive. Mm-hmm. So, you know, if I had gotten a lot of discouragement, it could have easily not happened, you know.
Why do you feel like at the time she may have like not been, you know, for it at the beginning, but then you kind of had a change of heart?
My grandmother really trusted my judgment. Even at a young age, I just always handle my business. You know, whatever business that is for that age, I was never a knucklehead or anything like that. So she just trusted that. I guess essentially I did my own research. I don't know, even though I didn't. But, you know, I just had to, she didn't want me to go because she probably understood the war. And mind you, this is July. I met my recruiter maybe May of 2002. So this is right after 9/11. 9/11. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if she really grasped that. I didn't grasp it. I don't know why I didn't, but it was more like, you know, I don't want something to happen to you. That's it. My grandma was very, very scary, and she just didn't want anything to happen. But then it was, you can do something, so okay.
So going from Massachusetts and being in your hometown to, you know, going into the military, like what was that transition like?
It was only challenging because maybe because of the structure, but I came from a very rough background, so it wasn't like, you know, I came from this plush lifestyle and now someone's yelling at me. It was like, psst, you know, my mother used to scream at me all the time. This ain't nothing, like, you know, this is all good. And then the physical part, I was never an athlete or anything like that. So the physical part was probably the hardest, if you were to say the hardest. And then I went in the winter, which I don't know what the hell I was thinking with that. So I'm from Massachusetts, but I wasn't like outside, like, you know, digging ditches or whatever. So the cold and, that was it. The cold and the physical part was a big transition, but everything else, I was like, put me on the plane, I'll go wherever. Mm-hmm.
And are you still kind of like precise and, you know, particular about everything that you do? You know, being in the military and having that, because I'll go ahead and say it, like my former job that I had, I worked at Costco, and I worked there for 10 years. The first 3 years, when I was still in college, I worked at outside at the gas station, and we had a supervisor. He was, I think they say he was special ops. I could be wrong, but
He was crazy, I bet.
But the thing about him, he was very laid back. He didn't really say a whole lot, but he was very methodical about everything that he did. So we used to have these gas caps, these big caps that used to cover the tanks outside, and he wanted all the stripes facing straight, every single thing.
That just gave me so much peace.
Yeah, he wanted everything facing a certain way, paperwork filed a particular way. And he was just always precise. He's like, man, I'm sorry I'm like this, but he said, just being in military, special. He said, I've always just been trained to do everything a particular way. He's always come to work at the same exact time, park in the same spot. Everything was down to a T.
Yeah,
the way he did it. But great guy, but he was very laid back. He didn't really say a whole lot. And I think, matter of fact, he's still out there as well. Great guy. But I just know from working with him. He always did things, down to the T, regardless of whatever it was.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, I would say, especially me being a warrant officer, that is pretty much how warrant officers are trained, to be very, very precise, because it was originally created for pilots. So pilots have to be extremely meticulous. So I know, I'm aware of that. Sometimes, it's an OCD. So, I don't want to be compulsive and and really focus on that stuff. So I'll be aware of stuff, but then choose not to necessarily do it that way for sake of time or sake of sanity. But am I like that? Oh yeah, pretty much all the time.
I think I saw where in another interview you had, I think you said it was a couple of times where you wanted to leave or something, you came back maybe once.
Yeah, I got out twice.
Okay.
I got out twice. Yeah.
Was it just something that you felt like at the time wasn't for you, or it just?
It was a series of unfortunate events, but really the first time, I was pregnant. I was married to another service member. Got pregnant. I thought I was going to be a housewife. That didn't work out. So I was like, oh, it's scary out here in the real world. I'm coming back. So, I came back, and then I was in the reserves. So I was active duty and then went to the reserves. And so when I came back the second time, I was just dealing with a whole bunch of really crazy life stuff. And so I wasn't going what they call drill. And drill is you work the 1 week in a month, 2 weeks out of the year. So I wasn't even doing that because I was dealing with life stuff. And so then I was like, I want to get out. I'm out. So they put me out. But then there was a period. It was almost like a buffer time where you can come back. And so I was like, I'm just kidding again. I'm back. And I'm staying this time. Yeah.
I saw on Black Enterprise. Well, before I even ask this question, outside of that, what kind of other work experience did you have?
Work or
just
business?
Work experience. Just because I know I saw some things online. I think you said you worked numerous different jobs on one of your Instagram posts. You said you worked different jobs, and I know you mentioned you worked 2 jobs while you were in school. But just kind of your background, were those some of those jobs I know in school and then during the military as well? Was it some of those jobs, different jobs you worked?
I think last time I counted, I had over 37 jobs in my
37.
life. Yeah, it's crazy. I know, because I worked 2 and 3 at one time sometimes. It's just never been a problem for me to get a job. So that's the bad part, because I'm like, I quit and then get a job in 2 days, so it's bad and good, I guess. But yeah, so I've had multiple jobs, but then in between that time, I've had businesses too. Right, so there's times where I had another job while I was full-time in the military, or, was working only on the weekends or something while I was in the military or something. So it's just always keeping that constant. I guess it's just like that scarcity mentality type thing, where you feel like I don't want to go back down to what I was before. So it's always, then when you elevate to another step, then you're like, I don't even want to go down to what I consider to be good in the past. I want to always stay up here. So what can I do to stay up here? It's just a constant battle. While
you were navigating different jobs and the military, did you ever get a sense of you found your purpose of what you really wanted to do, or was it just like you said, just making a living, just trying to get by?
It was when I found government contracting. It was kind of like real estate too. When I started with real estate, I feel like it fulfilled something, but the money didn't match. So if the money don't match, it gotta go. essentially. So when I found government contracting, I feel like I finally settled on something that I really enjoy because it gave me enough diversity to where I didn't feel like I'm pigeonholed into this one profession because there's multiple professions within my, within my business in particular, but then also with government contracting as a whole.
Absolutely. Before we get to the government contract, we're definitely about to dive into it. Another one of your posts said you were you lost 2 jobs, you were evicted, and your car was repoed within 60 days back in 2006. Would you say, just reflecting on that, would you say that was your lowest moment, lowest point, or?
It wasn't my lowest, but it was definitely in the top 3 of lowest moments. It was, that's when I got out.
Okay.
So it was kind of like, this really sucks. But then I've always, I guess my bounce back is kind of good because I'm thinking about some things that have happened to me recently where I'm like, oh my God, this is so bad. But then I'm like, I was dealing with way more back then.
Right.
Like, stop being a little, stop being a baby. So, it's like at that time, it was pretty rough. But I would say, okay, well, I don't have a car anymore. I don't have an apartment anymore. What am I going to do? I got to just put one foot in front of the other.
It's all material things anyway.
And then I can always get it back. The fact that I was always able to get a job and all those types of things that I wasn't worried.
Did you have any family or friends or anybody that you could turn to at that moment of like just for assistance, or were you just so used to, being on your own?
Well, yes and no. So no one actually could help me. The only way that I could have really gotten out of that situation was moving back to Massachusetts to be with my grandmother.
Oh, okay. So, if you don't mind, where were you kind of like located?
I was in Atlanta.
In Atlanta, okay. So you were already here.
I was already here. I was a single parent. My daughter was not maybe 1.
Okay.
And I hadn't met my my next husband yet. So that's how that transition happened. Went to live with him. So it was kind of like, okay, that was the fix of that problem, being evicted, no car, and all that kind of stuff. The other alternative was to move back to Massachusetts. And mind you, my grandmother lived in an apartment for 22 years. It's not like she had a house. You know what I mean? It was like she facing the same stuff I'm facing. So, and then moving back to Massachusetts was not an option in my mind.
Were you ashamed of like, have you ever been ashamed of like what people thought of you at that time, losing those type of positions? I know this was back in 2006. It was a little social media, but not like it is now.
Right.
Because, now on social media, everybody it's like a highlight reel where everybody just points out their success. But these type of things you don't really hear about. That's why I feel like it's so important to kind of share these stories. But were you ever like worried about what people thought of you, like losing these type of positions or anything?
I didn't have time to think about it, so you would, especially now with social media, like you're saying, if someone was to out me, that's why I'm so transparent. Like you will find a mugshot online if you dig long enough of me. So I put that stuff out before you even get a chance because I use that also for inspiration for other people, which no one wants to air out all their dirty laundry, but it's like, it is what it is.
And it's
like
part of your journey.
It is. And then it's like, I got a top secret clearance and I still expose myself to the government saying, yes, I have been arrested before. So, but I still got a top secret clearance. So it's like all this stuff is not anything that I kept a secret. So ashamed, no, because I feel like I really was doing things. I wasn't doing stuff to really put myself in a really bad situation. You know what I mean? So I was trying. There was just certain things that happened. So if I felt like I was a drug addict or something like that, or robbing a bank and then I went to prison or something like that, then I would be like, dang, I'm so ashamed of that because I did something bad to put myself in this situation. It was just a series of weird events.
Did you feel like you had was it a mentor or anybody that you could like go to and talk to kind of give you advice and kind of like help kind of like steer you in the right direction and just for any type of advice?
Yeah, I mean, there's been people along the way. When I lost the one job, I was working at, it was MCI. I don't know how low job, but MCI, like back in the day.
And
31.
Then,
you probably don't even remember MCI. But Verizon bought them, and I was working at Verizon essentially, like the call center. And there was a guy there, older guy. And when I was trying to get back into the military, I had to write a letter, and he helped me with the letter. He was like, stop using these type of words, be more positive. And it was like people would say that, but he was just kind of like, listen to me, like listen to what I'm telling you. And it did kind of shift I remember that a small shift at that time. So yeah, there's been people along the way, people that have helped me, have been kind, and so because of that kindness, it kind of changes how you are as a person too, and how you pay it forward.
That was gonna get ready to be my next question. Is when did you actually feel like things kind of started to shift for you? Was it getting back into the military again? Was that the moment where you felt like things kind of turned for the better for you?
I would say yes, because before that I was working at there was a bar club on Wesley Chapel in Atlanta called Scores. Now I was making about $500 a night as a waitress, which is excellent money for most people. But I mean, I was working like a dog, and working overnight, and I had a new baby, my son, my second child, and so it wasn't a long-term career thing. So then it was like, do I want to stay here or do I want to go full-time with the Army? But it was for 1 year. So it was like, I'm quitting this job to get a job for just 1 year. But, it's regular. I have medical insurance and, it's more respectable than working at basically a Hooters, So, yeah, it was a turning point. I was making maybe around the same amount of money, but it just changed my perspective about stuff, being more professional, kind of going into that corporate world more, So, yeah, and that was in 2008 when that happened, January 2008.
So, transition was this, so when exactly did the Foresight end? Because I know you said you did different companies, correct?
Yeah, throughout the years.
Yeah. So then you did the military help with the government contracting and Foresight Industries? Was that kind of like hand in hand?
No, they weren't hand in hand. But it was more like maybe a conceptual knowledge. Like the building I worked in, we had a janitorial company come in, and I'm like, okay, if I was to think about, they have these janitors come in, I'm looking at what they're doing, so I can hire someone to do that. And so, but I started off with real estate. So when I started off with real estate and I was flipping, I was a landlord and wholesaling. Ugh. So with that, I'm like, I had a contractor, he did the renovations. And so I'm like, well, I can take that same contractor and do the same stuff on the government side, because people were saying, why are you not doing government contracting? I'm like, I don't even know what that is. Like, what does that even mean? Right. And so when I started researching, I'm like, oh, I can just take those same skills and bring them over to government contracting. Conceptually, I didn't know how I was going to do it. I didn't know what that meant. And so the company started off as real estate in 2015. And then it kind of, I started it officially in 2017, but it was still real estate. I still had houses. And then 2018 is when I won my first bid on my first contract.
All right. Are you still dabble in real estate, or is that something that you kind of like?
I have a rental property. Like that's it. I'm not interested, and I'm about to sell it, so I'm not really interested in real estate anymore.
They say real estate is a great field, but it's a lot of work. Then I see people sometimes try to do the wholesaling.
The wholesaling
it's a house. It can be a hassle at times.
Yeah, and the money doesn't match. I want my money now. I don't want to wait 30 years. Like you paying me, if my mortgage is $1,500 and you paying me $1,800, then it's a get rich slow, and I'm cool with that if that's like passive. But it didn't match the effort. I'm like, I'm about to go to jail because these people are setting the thermostat on fire and like all kind of crazy. No, yeah. I'm a little too volatile for that.
Yeah, it's a definitely hassle. My brother, he actually backed into a deal. Somebody that was working with him, they were just trying to get rid of a house, and he was able to put something together quickly. But that was one of the only deals that I remember that him doing. But other than that, it's even like people post courses online about wholesaling and stuff. But I think it's like I haven't done it, but it looks like it's a lot of work.
It's like selling drugs. It's literally like selling drugs, and it's borderline illegal because then people. They don't trust you. I mean, I had one.
Sorry to cut you off.
No.
It's kind of like you're almost like you're the middleman trying to play matchmaker. You're trying to find somebody that's selling the house and looking for somebody who wants to buy a house, and you're trying to put them together. But it's almost like you're making money off the deal, and it's almost like they don't really know you're gonna profit off of it in a sense.
Yeah, and that makes people upset. And so I've even had where this guy had a hard money loan, and then he was fixing up a house, so the house was half fixed, but then his contractor ran out on the deal and then took all the carpet out the place, so he couldn't even do anything else. And so I found a buyer. The day of closing, he decided not to pay the hard money lender, unbeknownst to me, the middle person, right? So the day of the sale, I was about to make $11,000 on that deal. It went into it got sold on the courthouse steps the morning of.
Oh man!
And I'm like, all this work, because he decided. I said, why wouldn't you pay the hard money lender to make everything continue to go? He was like, well, I didn't think I had to pay him. So I'm not in control of any of it. So that was an end for me.
Yeah. So that's what so that was a deal breaker for you, kind of like the wholesaling part.
The tenant who wasn't able to be evicted, even though he didn't pay any rent, and he set the thermostat on fire in January in a boarding house, was the end. Man. I had to talk to my lawyer, like, is this worth going? Like, is this worth going running up in his house? And she's like, no, it's not worth it. And I'm like, I can't do this anymore because I'm crazy. Too.
I mean, it works for some people,
and it works in some circumstances,
right? Absolutely,
it does, but I'm not that person.
Right. So Foresight Industries. How did you come up with the name of it, and then like what was like the meaning behind it?
It started off as my old name was Sheena Investments when I was on my real estate kick, and I hated it. I won my first 3 contracts with that name, but I hated it. It didn't match. People didn't understand, and so they say when they don't understand your name, that could, potentially take you away from deals. So Foresight, I actually hired someone on Fiverr to come up with the name. This is the first time out of all the business I've had where I could not pick a name. And so I was like, I want something with a number in it. I want something to represent my family, with industries at the end. And so he said, okay, cool. So my name is Sheena, obviously. So there's 4 of us. My husband, my husband, myself, and my 2 kids, 4. And then Sheena, S, and then my daughter's name is Naya, so the Y, and then T, Terrell. So both my husband and my son's name is Terrell. So that's kind of how that came up. And I was like, okay, Foresight. So he just gave me the whole rundown. I was like, that's cool, even though no one can ever pronounce it correctly, but whatevs, we're here. And that's...
Man, that's creative, though. I never even thought about it. When I was looking at it, I was like, even just the way it was spelled and everything, like Foresight Industries.
Yeah.
It's a very unique way, but it has a meaning and a purpose behind it. That's what I really like about it.
Yeah, thank you.
Getting your first contracts, did you have anybody kind of showing you the ropes of like how to put these types of deals together?
No, it just kind of reminded me of real estate. I mean, I don't even remember how I found where to go because I started on local. I didn't even start on federal. And this is, matter of fact, rewind. I started by kind of getting an understanding by going to I went to like 1 or 2 conferences, and so they were federal conferences. And then I watched the movie War Dogs, and so War Dogs was like,
I'm gonna have to go watch that now.
Yeah, game changer. I mean, like seriously, game changer. And I don't know how I found my way to the local side, but I was like, well, shoot, it's the same thing. Like this is a state building or a county building asking for, I think it was floor waxing at the time. And I was like, oh, they're telling me exactly what they want. This is not hard. Like, right. I'm just going to fill this out and then, submit a price. And I submitted a price based on market research, and it was a terrible bid. I ended up having to cancel it. I never even performed it because my contractor was like, no. And so I'm like, I found a loophole in the documentation where I could cancel it. And then I bid on my second one. My contractor did come out and, visit all the sites. It was for some fire station floor repair.
So when you say they canceled the bid, was it that you set a number too high for them or
too low?
Too low.
Way too low.
So you were going to charge them a low price to
way
do it?
Too low. So they wanted, I don't remember, 3 warehouses, the floors waxed with like a specific wax, like 3 coats. And I think I might have said it was going to cost $10,000 total. And then my contractor is like, that's a minimum of $27,000. So he's like, unless you want to come out of pocket $17,000, there's no way I can do it. And so I didn't have anybody else. This is the one sole person I have relied on since 2014 to do all my real estate stuff. So it was kind of like too late. I couldn't like try to hustle and find anyone because I'd already been awarded. So, but
Sorry to cut you off, but
Yeah, no.
so why would they want to? Because to me, it would seem like you would want to, if somebody's gonna charge you that much, I get when you want to go with like the lowest price, or because you say it's a $27,000 job, but if they're saying, well, somebody's gonna do this for 10,000, I mean, of course, everything that's cheap ain't good, but if you were like the lowest bidder on it, why would they not want to take the lowest?
They did take it.
Oh, they did take it.
They did take it.
Oh, okay.
But I didn't have anybody to perform it for that amount.
I got you. Okay.
Yeah, nobody was gonna do it for 10,000.
I got you.
I made the error, because I didn't really know. I didn't really understand waxing like that, So, but luckily I was able to say, I cannot perform this. Please leave me alone. Essentially.
Okay.
And usually that's a problem. Sometimes that's a problem, but with this particular one, it wasn't.
Okay. So how do you know, this is going to be one of my later questions, but while we're talking about it, like, how do you know, like, what to set your price as, like, when you go through deals and stuff like that?
$1 million question. It greatly depends on what you're doing. So if you're talking about anything that includes staff, a lot of times you have to go by the Davis-Bacon or the wage determination, which is like the minimum wage for the government. Well, not just the government, but the Davis-Bacon is kind of like the minimum wage for labor. And so with that, you have to pay, say the minimum wage for janitorial is $11 an hour. But then there's fringe benefits that you have to pay, which is an additional $4 an hour. And then there's like hazard pay for an additional $2 an hour. And then you got to work in your overhead for the taxes. So it might start off at 11 and then be $20 an hour.
I got you.
So you have to, that's one. And then if you have to provide supplies, then you just have to guesstimate. That's why you should really go into an industry you understand. But knowing how much it might cost for this amount of supplies for this period of time. If it's a one and done, meaning you only do this one job and then you're out of there like we did with the fire stations, this is how much the total cost is going to be. Or if it's every month for 5 years, how much is that per month? Okay. So most people don't know their pricing, but then you start putting in bids and getting the practice, if you will. That's what will, you can see what other people are bidding, then you'll kind of know where you are.
So they don't tell you like what's the
Not
number?
Usually. Sometimes they'll say our budget is $300,000, but you're like, oh, I know damn well they can't do this for $300,000. I can't do this for $300,000. So do you have agency? Have you considered weather? Have you considered this? So I can do it for $400,000. So there's sometimes there's a negotiation, sometimes there's not.
And sometimes it's almost like they kind of hoping you throw like a lower number in there, so they can. Because if
they can get it for the free 99, they're gonna try to get it. Yeah, 1,000%. And that's how a lot of people get into government contracting, by lowballing everyone, which is unfortunate because a lot of times you killing your business before it even gets a chance to start.
Absolutely. So with your first couple of deals, were you hands-on working in the business, or did you know that I need to hire some people to to get these?
Oh yeah, I don't know how to do floor waxing. Oh yeah, somebody getting hired. Like I don't know how to do floor replacement and all that. So for the first two, my contractor, the one that I have with real estate. So he was like the construction manager, if you will. So if we needed someone to do the removal, he had a crew for that. We needed somebody to do the install. He had a crew for that. We needed someone to, get the dumpster. It was crew for that. He was like the nucleus for all of that. But of course, you can't put your full, heart and spirit into one person. So our relationship fizzled after a couple of years. But then when I got into janitorial, that was my third awarded contract in 2019. I had to be creative. I mean, I did jump in and clean. My kids were cleaning. Everybody in my whole family didn't touch the scrub brush at some point. So, just having to get in there and see what is actually needed is important, because if you're going to be in this industry, you need to know what right looks like and what wrong looks like.
So when you bid on a contract, can you talk a little bit about that process of like how long it takes when you like how does it go about finding a contract, bidding on it, and then how long does it normally take for it to like go all the way through, I guess, to know that you have
been awarded? It greatly varies. Like we bid on a contract back in June and we're still waiting. Like they did the results saying that we were the lowest bidder, which is good for this particular circumstance. but they haven't moved forward. And then there's some where they'll say you've been awarded and you got to start in a week. So from the time you find it, depending on how you find it, say if I did the traditional route, like the state of Georgia sends me an alert saying, here's an opportunity that your company may want to bid on. And so what's today? The 27th of November. So they might say it's due the 27th of December. So you got a month. And then in between that time, you got to ask questions. You got to go to a site visit and say it's a 1-year contract for sake of argument. And I have to figure out who I'm going to staff with that. If it's janitorial, who I'm going to staff, how many hours do they need, blah, 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 blah. And then I submit my bid by the 27th of December. And so they accept it because that's a really key piece, because some people, they'll turn this stuff in and not know that the contracting officer never received it. That's actually a huge part that people don't understand. And so they receive it, and then you don't know how many people are bidding on it. It could just be you. It could be 100 people, literally. I've seen some with like 150 people bid on gloves or something like that. And so your price, they may be looking for the lowest bidder, or they may be looking for best quality. They may be looking for several things. You never know. And then they can let you know anytime. It could be a year from now. This contract that I totally forgot we even bid on. And they're like, oh, hey, you won. What? Like, when was that? I don't remember the pricing, So it's like that.
So do you have a set team that does these jobs, or do you go by, for each contract you just find people that are looking for some work at that moment in time, or do you have like a set employees that that just work for you on every job?
Okay, I think you're asking two separate questions. So as far as the paperwork, yes, I have a program manager, capture manager that sources the bids, if you will. So I have a full executive staff, a COO, regional managers, HR manager, admin, capture manager / program manager. Yes, so they source it, how many staff we're going to need, how much it's going to cost, blah, blah, blah. And then the actual workers, depending on workers. So the ones who are actually performing on the contract, they could either be employees or they can be subcontractors. Okay. It just depends. Like right now, we just finished the Philadelphia Phillies Stadium, so those were employees. But I have a regional manager who's a contractor. He's not on my, he's not a W-2. And then in Delaware, we have employees. But then for Atlanta Public Schools here, it's contractors that I use. But they do the same stuff over and over, pressure washing and floor stuff consistently. I don't even have to deal with them. They know exactly what to do. They got a good relationship with the school, and they,
So how often, if ever, do you actually deal with the actual employees that are actually on the in the field working?
Very infrequently, and I do want to change that. I do want to change that because they're in different states, so I used to go to Delaware every month, and then it became every quarter. Now it's kind of like twice a year. It's not my favorite place to be, but I don't deal with them as much.
And then when you do, because I feel like a lot of times the higher up, and even if you go work a 9 to 5, the people in management, once they climb up that ladder, sometimes, not all the time, some of those managers, when they get up high up, they can kind of lose touch of what it's like to actually be in the field and working hands on once they climb up that ladder. So at times it can be important to work with your employees and talk to them. And I know with your military background, I know you got hard coaching at times. So when you do deal with employees, how do you approach talking to them? Because everybody comes from different backgrounds. Some people can take hard coaching. Some they're not as receptive to it. So how do you deal with them when you have to engage with employees?
Since I have a northern regional manager and then another manager specifically for Delaware. So the northern regional manager does Delaware and Philly, and then the Delaware manager deals with all the employees in Delaware. So I got kind of 2 layers in between. I can feel people why when they move up to the top that they lose the touch because they become jaded. When I first started, all the employees had my number. Call me whenever, and that became an absolute nightmare. It was really
because they probably call you about everything.
Texting, it didn't work out. It ended up being worse. So then I just inserted another what's my word, non-connected layer, and that's my HR manager. So if they have, I'm like checking with every single employee to make sure. When I do go to visit them, though, I'm just somebody said stop saying humble, because humble is like a derogatory term to yourself, but I'm in the background. And so, my COO and my regional manager, like, you need to, show more of your dominance. And I'm like, that's not me. Like, when I go to visit the sites where they work, I'm like, give me the toilet brush. Like, maybe you haven't been shown specifically how to do this type of cleaning. Mm-hmm. Like, they even took a picture of me cleaning one of the toilets. Mm-hmm. It was like, this is a damn shame. But I'm like, that's normal for me. So when I do interact with the employees, I'm very, very humble.
Yeah, because I'm the same way with you. Like, I don't mind, getting down and showing people work, like, because I want people to know. I don't want you to feel like I own you. I never want to feel like I just control anybody. Even when I have people come working with me, I always say, you work with me, you don't work for me. Because I don't want you to feel like I own you and I can tell you what you can and can't do. Like, I'm going to show you that I can get in here, set up cameras, microphones, and run the behind the scenes, everything. Like, I never want people to feel like I'm better than them in any sense. Now, we still have a job to do.
Of course, yeah.
But I don't want you to feel like that, and then negative perception of you. So it's always good, because like I said, I never want to lose touch of anything anything I'm doing. But when you said that about giving them your number and them reaching out to you all the time, my sister, she works in HR right now. She's had several well-paying jobs in HR, and the stuff that she tells us that she has to deal with, like, off the clock, they call her and just petty stuff on the job, or people getting into it and you got to deal with all of that, or if they check come out wrong or something, like all the stuff that HR has to deal with. I'm like,
and it's deeper than that, because when I went to this program, it's called VIP, Veterans Institute for Procurement. Mm-hmm. They talked about, it's not if you get sued, it's when. So you can really, especially as the owner of the company, you can really back yourself into a corner, because say an employee texts me after hours and they're like, such and such made me feel uncomfortable. And then I'm like, like, whether it's a lie or not, they're going to be like, well, I told Sheena didn't report something. Now I have this institutional knowledge about something I didn't even know I needed to say something about. Now I'm getting sued. Mm-hmm. So those are the things that I'm like, keep me out of all of that, because I am trying to keep this as just super smooth and non-confrontational. And I'm working with, I don't want to sound like I'm downgrading anyone. Like I said, you picked up many scrub brushes, but like, I'm working with labor force. So a lot of people are, second chance. A lot of the people are, they have problems, mentally, all those kind of things. And, they're already coming to me with baggage. Like, I've had employees go to a mental institution, jail, like really serious crimes against them. So I'm like, they're great workers, excellent workers, but they got problems, just like I had problems, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I always joke that I'm getting it all back. All the bad things I've done as an employee, I'm getting all of it back.
Hey, speaking of some other thing, I want a couple more questions about contracts. As far as like, when you do contracts, like you say earlier, you mentioned that you like actually put in one like a year ago. You almost forgot about it. Mm-hmm. Like, do you just bid on contracts, or just as many as possible, or is it ones in particular like you really have to go through it and make sure like this is something that I know we can handle?
All the ones we go after, we can handle. Okay. But there are some that take a little longer than others. And it was a point where we were doing a lot. Like, we were bidding on so much stuff. But it was all, since I'm in facility management, that's why I said I like the diversity, because it could be janitorial, fencing, floor repair, painting, drywall. It could be so many things. So there's constant work coming in nonstop. Like, we turn down a lot of stuff. We evaluate way better now than we did. And we don't just do government. We do commercial, we do corporate, we do federal. So out of all those streams, and then, people will contact me because they got work and they want us to be a sub. So it's coming from all different angles. So, you try to get to a place where you don't have to bid on contracts. That's the ultimate goal. But, we're trying to slim down some of the services so it can be streamlined to, like, my pressure washing guy is top notch. So if we can get all pressure washing, that's all him. And then litter pickup, we got one pending for litter pickup. That's like, those are my two favorite. Pressure washing and litter pickup, my two favorites. So yeah, as far as federal, local, and corporate is a little different, but subcontract, it's kind of like local, federal, and subcontract, and that's kind of how we've been navigating. And we do some corporate and some commercial, depending, because someone recommends me or whatever. As long as it's under facility management, we can at least explore it. The only thing, federal, sometimes they want more requirements as far as proving that you can provide this service, and also the subcontracting limits. So that's sometimes an issue, because if I'm essentially subbing out all the work, that could be a red flag for the federal side. But on the local side, they don't give a damn. Like, I'm sorry, can I?
Oh, you fine? Okay. Yeah, you fine? Yeah.
They don't give a damn as long as you can do this work for what you say you can do it for. Usually, they don't care about how much of it is being subbed out.
Does it matter like as far as like the location, or do you just go anywhere? Like if you you get a contract over in California, is anywhere in the country, does it matter, or you just
focus on the East Coast, like East Coast and then Texas, because I have assets in Texas. I would love for stuff to be where we already have stuff, so Delaware, Philly, Atlanta. I got an off and on contract in Knoxville, and then Florida. So, if it can be in those areas where I know I have a solid team, then that's preferred.
Okay.
Yeah.
You had a post that I saw when I was a couple of days ago where you said, don't shy away from approaching corporate agencies directly, meaning like, shooting them a call or email. Like, talk a little bit about that post of like just reaching out, touching base with different agencies. Yeah.
So even that's kind of newish to us. There's other facility management companies who secure corporate contracts. So you can reach out to those agencies who already have the secured contracts, and they'll give you like several stores to do what you do. Like, of course, I'm going to always reference facility management because that's what I do. But, insert your industry. And if there's already a company that's securing these contracts, work with them. But then on the other side, you can register as a vendor for any of these agencies, for any AT&T, Coca-Cola, Facebook. I did an industry day back in 2020 because I was like fully focused on corporate contracting in 2020 because, obvious everything kind of like shut down ish.
Right.
I didn't even know there were so many headquarters here in Atlanta. Like, I didn't even know there was a Facebook headquarters here. I was like, well, you guys, especially you don't live here, but I was like, what? I'm over here talking to this lady like, oh, well, wherever it is. And she's like, well, we have 2 offices in Atlanta. I was like, oh, so you can reach out to, do your research. The only thing about corporate side is they want you to come in there knowing everything about Coca-Cola. Like, they want you to know exactly where the headquarters are in that location. So when you're talking to them, you're like, hey, I've already been to the Coca-Cola factory. I see, I saw that the floors were dirty. Literally that blunt. And I register as a vendor on their website. You just usually look up supplier diversity or how to do business with Coca-Cola, something like that. Mm-hmm. And then you register on their site as a vendor. And then the only difference between the corporate and local and federal, like, corporate's over here, federal and local's over here, is that you usually won't see what they need. And so with the corporate, you have to be invited. So what would typically happen is you register as a vendor. You may or may not do an industry day and say, hey, I've already been registered. Let's have this conversation. They'll say, okay, I'll pull your profile. We do have some floors that need to be cleaned. And then they invite you to a floor cleaning bid, if you will. It usually won't be just listed on their website. Mm-hmm. So you can reach out directly like that. It may take a little while or it may be immediate because there's a lot of really large like franchises that you've never heard of that, they have a whole family-owned supply diversity team and they want to talk to you. They want to get the warm and fuzzy from you.
Right.
So that's your entryway. Whereas a federal and local, you just kind of like relationships definitely, but you're just kind of bidding.
How often do you should you follow up? It's like when you introduce yourself and follow up. How often should you just follow up?
That's a really great question because I went to a FEMA conference in 2018 and there was a lady explaining that there was a gentleman that wanted to work with FEMA. He was already registered the way he was supposed to, and he followed up with her every quarter. And so when she did have something, because FEMA's fast paced, they need to source that contract usually within 72 hours. That thing came up that he could provide. So it really depends. FEMA, maybe once a month, or any other agency, you have to kind of gauge. But some say, don't email me every month. They'll tell you straight up, so that's where those conversations come into play, where, at least email them every quarter. Hey, we're still here. Put them on if you send out a newsletter for your company, put them on your newsletter so they can be like, oh, shoot, Foresight just won a contract with Kennesaw State, whatever. And they'll be like, man, we really do need that work too, or call. Like some of them like calling. Even because it's like mostly old heads. I was in the military for 20 years. I know the old heads that were behind the desk, and you call them, you'll get a better response than if you email them, or vice versa. It just really, you have to gauge it. You have to be a business person. So It's like I don't have the magic answer. So it's like you have to go out there and use your negotiation power. It might even be better in person.
Right, because I feel like I think it's almost like a fine line. It's like, you want to follow up and be persistent, but you at the same time, you don't want to feel like you just harass them and you just begging hey, I need this job or anything like that. Me personally, I do it even though we're in two different fields, the way that I do mine is, and I don't want people to take this the wrong way, but I'm gonna go ahead and say it. I read a book, 50 Cent mentioned it, and I read a book earlier this year, and this is not any type of political endorsement, but the book that I read was by Donald Trump, The Art of the Deal. It's an older book.
Yep.
And one of the main pieces of information that I took away from that book was, direct to source, meaning when I kind of like the way we put this interview together, I reached out to you directly. Now, a lot of times you can shoot an email or call or office or whatever, and you don't get directly to the person who owns that company. Now, fortunate enough, I was able to do that, but a lot of times, like Donald Trump mentioned it in his book, he said a lot of times, instead of going directly to the source, you go through a middleman, and the middleman really doesn't want to ruffle any feathers. He wants to just keep his job and do what he does.
Yep.
So if you can't get directly to the source, and you go through the middleman, you may get a runaround. So for me, I try to go directly to the source if I can. Some people reply, some don't. Sometimes I have to go through a middleman, and it works out fine. But that's some of the information. That's one of the pieces of information I use. Try to go directly to the source, and I try to follow up like I did with you. I try to follow.
Your follow up was perfect. Yeah. I ain't gonna lie, because I probably get 200 DMs a day, but I check all of my messages personally. Every single one. Right. So, but it wasn't like Aggie. It was perfect. Yeah,
it was kind of like space up, because I had some things going on too. But I was like, hopefully she remembers. Yeah. Because at times, some people they'll respond and say, "Hey, I got you. We'll do an interview," and then something happens. You kind of lose touch. I don't take it personal, but at times it does happen. Some people say it's not a good fit for them, or they may not have the time. And it's
gentle. Okay. You were doing a gentle follow up. It wasn't aggressive. It wasn't rude. It wasn't salesy, And I recognize that. I'm giving you the feedback because, you only know yourself. But I'm telling you as a person who's, I guess semi-busy or whatever. And I have a lot of stuff going on, and you have a lot of stuff going on. Your follow-up was perfect as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you. I definitely appreciate that.
Yeah.
And speaking about, saying people don't follow up at times and not getting around to it, rejection is just all a part of business. If you're gonna be an entrepreneur,
the dreaded rejection.
So, how do you handle rejection?
Really good question too, because I think at the beginning, I always said I'm not a salesperson. And sometimes I do still struggle with that because I don't want to beg anyone to do anything. And so
I'm the same way.
Yeah, it's like, and not to toot or anything, toot my own horn or anything like that. But it's like, do you understand what you'll get from me? You know what I mean? You don't even get it, so it's okay if you decide not to. But you can't really sell like that. Right. So rejection, the rejection doesn't bother me. I have a quick temper, so I'll be like, I don't even need you. You know what I mean? Even though I probably do need them, it's in some circumstances. So I just don't care about the rejection part. It's just like you don't even know, you're not even there enough to know that this will be good for you or whatever,
Right.
you know. Especially dealing with now I'm dealing with students with the course. It's like, hello, if you know, the person I posted yesterday, she followed everything I said, and then you see the success. You know what I mean? Like, I'm telling you, if you literally follow this will happen. But then people try to find 17,000 ways to not do it the way that I'm saying. So, you know, like the rejection part, I don't necessarily care about, because you're going to be sick of me, like just
Right.
straight sick of me, or you're going to tell me or something. But that's only if I want to pursue that thing, you know.
Rejection, man. I tell people. I had a young man. He was covering the Hornets. This was last season. I had another young man come up to me at the first home game this season, but from last season, he was working concessions, and he was like, "Hey, man, doing what you do, like, do you have any advice for me?" He's like, some of the stuff that you did. I said, "Hey, man, just stay consistent." I said, "Get used to rejection, because that's part of it, and just believe that you can do it. Like, you have to believe. Like, you got to have that belief that no matter what, no matter how many times you hear no, because it's gonna come your way." I have thousands of emails where people would just reject anything that I'm doing, and I just, at times it bothers you.
Yeah.
But I pick my head up, because I'm like, man, these people really don't know the work that I put into it. Some of the people that I've interviewed and doing things with with the Hornets, and then doing my first season with South Carolina State, HBCU in our area. It's just like, man, people don't really understand what they're doing. But I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna just keep on going and just continue stay consistent and putting out great work. But it's like it hurts, but just gotta. It's gonna be, if you're gonna be an entrepreneur, you're gonna have to deal with it regardless.
And then it's like, for every $100 you lose over here, and you feel like that's painful, you get so much more on the other end. It's not like there's any shortage, you know what I mean? So that's kind of how I feel about when I lose bids. Like, people will say they bid on one contract and lost, and they never bid again. They were just so disappointed, or their SAM registration got denied only because their address was spelled wrong, and they're like, I can never do it again. I'm like, that's so small in the grand scheme of things, when you don't even have time to interview everybody that you emailed. Like, you literally don't physically have the time.
Right.
So it wouldn't even be advantageous for it to happen for you. So you got to really look at it like, this is a rejection for a reason. Maybe they might come back later. You never really know. And it's like 2 tears in a bucket. Like, just, it's not a, and I get it, because I'm not reaching out to people typically to do my interviews, but it's like, who cares?
Yeah, and I don't take it personal. One of the I read Don Miguel Ruiz, the 4 Agreements, and one of his principles in there was, don't take anything personal. So if they say no, I mean it's life. It won't be the last time.
And then you don't know what someone's going through. You know what I mean? Like, they could really be dealing with some life stuff, and they're just not in the best spirits, but they're just gonna be like, they're gonna ignore you instead of explaining it. Or there's just so many elements to other people that you can't even worry about why they said no.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Got a few more questions, and we'll get ready to wrap it. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Yeah, likewise.
When you're bidding on contracts or any type of work that you do, are you hesitant to let them know that you're a black-owned business? And the reason I asked that conversation is because, so earlier this year, me and one of my closest friends, we flew to Utah. And what happened was, so the reason we went out there was because, about 2 years ago, I interviewed the founder of Reebok, and he told another gentleman about me, and this guy, he built like a $42 billion hedge fund company. So we flew out. He flew us out to Utah, paid for our hotel and everything.
Nice.
We went out there, went to his took us out up in the mountains at his home, beautiful home. I never been in a home like that in my life.
Especially out in Utah, so they got those grand houses.
And it was cold, man. It was cold. So during the interview, we talked a lot about business, and one of the questions I asked him was, so I asked him, I was like, and I brought up, because we talk about this a lot with a lot of black entrepreneurs, finding, like, having access to capital for many different reasons. We don't have the access to that type of capital that they do. So I asked him, like, how can black-owned businesses, get that type of access to capital? And, me and 2 of my best friends, we was talking about it, and they understood where I was coming from, but at the same time, they was like, man, you might should even ask him that because he's a wealthy white man. He may not be. He's probably not. He may not be connected to black owned business, so that might not be the type of question to ask him. I'm like, my thing is, if you don't know, if you don't ask him, you never know, because maybe he does have information on how black owned businesses get that type of access to capital. And what I was telling him was that some of the entrepreneurs that we interviewed, they were hesitant on letting people know that they were black, because if they did, for some reason they may turn their heads. Like I said the other couple months ago when I interviewed Miss Aaliyah Smith, she owns 2 peach cobbler factories. Mm-hmm. Same thing happened to her. Credit was great, had the money, everything checked out. But once they saw her in person, she said one person never even responded. So I know I've been long-winded with this, but I wanted to just ask you all of that because are you hesitant on like letting them know that you're a black-owned business?
I think I'm a little better now, but at the beginning, yeah, absolutely not. Were you gonna know I was even a woman? Because I'm in facility management. Like I was in IT for 20 years, so I know what it's like to be essentially discriminated against because I'm female or because I'm black. Mm-hmm. Like most black women are not in IT. Period. I was a unicorn. So going into facility management, it's like I'm not typical anyway. I got long nails, I got locks. Like if I walk in the room talking about I'm about to build a building, they're gonna be like, sis, who? Right. Like what are you even talking about? So, and it's almost like I kind of do that on purpose too, to be a little more bold. Some people have told me you need to put like a white person in as a front person for your business. I'm not doing that. I don't care if it's the demise of my business.
But it's sad you even have to do something like that though.
Yes, and they're like, well, it's the ultimate goal that matters. No, but recently though, it's been kind of cool to be black. Unfortunately, because of the stuff that happened in 2020, it hyper elevated, I guess, being black, and so there's a lot more opportunities, or at least the appearance of opportunities. So I don't lead with I'm a black female, give me money or give me a contract. Absolutely not, because we have a proven track record. Like we've done this, we do this in real life. So I want that to be, of course, explored first, but I could see the rejection when I come into like a meeting where they're like, you were on the short list. It's you and 2 other people. It's like, I've actually done work in this building already. Like we're doing something else. And then this was for a police station. There's 4 police officers, white police officers in like this hick town, and like 1 black lady and then me. And they're like, wow, look at those nails. I already knew it was over. It was over at that moment. I already knew it was over. And it was. They let me know when I was getting in the car, I get a call saying, yeah, unfortunately you didn't get. I'm like, well, what changed between when I came in this office and 5 minutes after I walk out? Nothing but my appearance. So my friend was like, you need to put your picture on the website and da-da-da-da. I'm still battling with that. I had a company, one of my last contracts, pest control company needed a cleaning company. And she was like, she's a black owned company here in Atlanta. And she's like, are you black? Like literally. And I'm like, yeah. And then she's like, I was looking on your website and I was asking like, are they black? And I'm like, well, I guess that's maybe a good thing. I don't know. Like I want it to just be like the work shows itself.
Right.
And me being black is an additive if it needs to be. If you need to meet your quota, then cool. Like for veteran, for a female, for black, great. But I'm cautious with it because I'm in Atlanta. So sometimes that's a benefit because they're like, I'm trying to give you all the work because you're the only black female that's doing this. But on the flip side, you got the guy saying, look at your nails. You didn't get the job.
It's like you already.
Yes.
But, and the thing is, it's sad because that shouldn't even matter. It's like,
and I'm not doing the work personally. No CEO is out here scrubbing toilets.
Exactly.
Like, so if you see that my business is doing stuff across the East Coast, then I'm not the one that's doing the work. So even at the very least, it's like, well, she probably has workers that can do that.
It's almost like they just don't want to do. Even though they know they need the work done, they just don't want to do business with you.
Right.
And that's sad that because of your skin color, that they'll turn you down. Your work can be 5 times better than the other person, but because you don't look like them, they end up getting a job. It's a book, another book. I know I mentioned a lot of books.
No, I'm
I
a
read
reader
all the time. It's a book. It's a great book. It's called Why Should White Guys Have All the Fun? And it was a gentleman named Reginald Lewis, and he went to school to be a lawyer. He tried to buy several businesses, and a couple of times, the first 2 times the deals were almost went through, but the second one, the first one didn't go through. The second one almost went through. They were all signing all the contracts, but when the guy knew he was black, but once he found out he was black or whatever, it was just like he just made up an excuse. It's like, you try to make a side deal with me about this business, so he ended up suing the guy.
Yeah.
But even though he knew the deals wasn't going through because he was black, but he didn't use that as an excuse.
Yeah.
He kept on going.
Yeah.
So the third deal, he didn't tell him who he kind of played it like he was the middleman, like working out a deal for somebody else.
Got you.
And like right at the time it was closing time, then he let him know, like, I'm the guy who's gonna be running the business.
I know they were like,
exactly. But it was a great book. He never used any type of excuses, even though he knew the circumstances, he knew everything he was going up against. It was a great book, and
like
it was
that.
it was a great book. And he passed away when he was, I think, in like 52, 53. He was young when he passed away. But it's like that type of stuff really does exist. And when I was working at my job, I would have these conversations with my coworkers. They didn't look like me, and I would tell them, I'm not going to use my skin color as an excuse as to why I may not receive opportunities, but at the same time, I'm not going to act like that's not a reason why. Exactly. And that's what I was just trying to tell them. It's like, it happens. They understood it, but at the same time, it's like, nah, they could be kind of a
There's
excuse.
no way they can understand it if they've never been rejected by a loan. Like you said, I've had that same thing where I had the money in the bank that I was asking for. Mm-hmm. I've had the proven track record. When you go into government contract, they're like, oh, all you need to do is bring them on an awarded contract. And they're going to give you all the money going to start flowing. That's false. It depends on your skin color. I have people who started after me, white-owned companies who started like literally 4 years ago. They selling their companies for like $100 million. Why? They're not putting in more work. You're not telling me you putting in more work than me. That's exactly. A fact. So it's like, okay, well, here we are. Now I know what I have to deal with. And again, no excuses. I'm just doing the best I can with what I have, you know?
And I think it's a lot of times people look at a black-owned business, they all automatically assume that it lacks the quality. It's not up to par as a white-owned establishment or any other business, which it shouldn't be that way.
But I'll say this, though. I'm sorry. I didn't mean
go ahead.
I'll say this. A lot of times, some of those companies are unable to be up to par. And this is where I realized this. There was a black hair store near my old house, and he had like nothing in there. He had a huge space, but it was so empty. And he said that he was literally like blocked from buying the stuff from China and all the places where you would get the stuff from. And so then now I'm looking at like, this place don't have nothing. But then he literally cannot get what he needs to get because, you know, the Asians had that locked down for so long. Now it's better. But like sometimes they may not get, even when I had a massage studio a long time ago, like I'm not able to get that. Like I don't have the access to capital. So I'm just trying to like band-aid some of these things to make it work, and then hopefully I'll get them build up the money in order to make these things better. But right now I don't have the ability because I don't have access to capital. So it becomes this perpetual cycle of like, I can't get, so then I don't produce, and then people are like, oh, this business is not up to par, and then on we go, you know.
Absolutely. That's a perfect segue to my next question as well, because a lot of our black-owned businesses, they don't have the access to capital. They can't get the necessarily funds or any of the materials that they need for their business to thrive. And sometimes it's our own people that if something doesn't go the way they want it to, they may go online and bash these companies.
They can't wait.
Yeah, they can't wait to say something negative about it. Even though you can go to Walmart and customer service is not where it needs to be, you just deal with it. But with a black-owned business, it's automatically like we expect to get a deal, or we expect the quality to be exceptional right out the gate. Mm-hmm. So do you feel like we give black-owned businesses enough grace as far as like, you know, trying? And I'm not saying you when you start a business, it should just start out janky and it stays that way, or put out the best quality that you can, but at the same time, understand that it takes time. Nothing's gonna be perfect. So, do you feel like we give black businesses enough grace?
Yes and no, because I think some people do stay in that janky space. Because one thing I've experienced, I've been in probably, I don't know, a dozen programs. One thing that I think is a problem is in a lot of other cultures, like they teach their kids to do the thing that they're doing. That kid does that thing, or at least they send their kids to school to learn how to do better than what they did. Again, I'm a teacher, so I can't pretend like I don't understand certain things because a lot of black people refuse to be knowledgeable about stuff. They will run a whole $1 million business. They ain't never took a business class, never read a book, never even tried to learn about how to be better. And that's a self problem. So you can't blame anybody but yourself when you're not trying to be better in that aspect. You don't know everything, and you're not supposed to. You're not even trying to hire someone to do better. So as far as grace, I don't give nobody grace for that. But when it comes to that man who had the hair store or the beauty supply store was trying, like he's paying $5,000 a month trying to pay for this space, and he can only sell $500 worth of stuff a month. He's doing everything in his power.
That's different. Yeah,
so it's like, but the person's gonna bash the place without I ask. I'll be like, so what's going on here? You know, I want to know. Like, I'm a very inquisitive person, so I want to know what is the challenge here. The fact that you don't have stuff in here. And when he broke it down, that man wanted to cry, and I wanted to cry with him because I'm like, what a position to be in. And now you got people talking bad, like this is the worst beauty supply store I've ever been to in my life, and it's like, you don't even know, you know. But then also me as a consumer, I can't feel bad because I need what I need too. So there's just so many elements to these things. Like the only thing I don't give grace for, well, though, as far as knowledge, but then customer service. So
no matter what customer service, you still be respectful, regardless.
But that's also a problem, and it's not just black. Yeah, we know that. But you know, here in Atlanta, there's so many black people that a lot of businesses are, you know, at least the people working in the front are black. So, you know, then you're thinking about the customer service, and it's just so many elements to it. I really try to get to the bottom of whatever it is.
For me personally, even if I go to a black-owned business, I always want to support because I want to see them do well. And if it's something I don't like, I'm not the type to go on social media and just bash anybody anyway. So I'm not going to do that to any business, especially a black-owned business. Now, if somebody comes up to me personally and they ask me about it somewhere I went, and I might tell them it wasn't the best, but you'll never see it go online and say just throw this business under the bus, because at the same time they still trying to feed their family and take care of themselves as well. But like you said, that doesn't give you an excuse to like lack that knowledge and not have your customer service be up to par. Like no matter who you are, your business is still, you know, thrive in customer service anyway, because these are the people that's gonna help, you know, take care, keep you in business.
Right.
On top of all of that. But,
right. And you know, that gentleman, I can't think of his name, but he went to Candy's restaurant. What is it called? 20. The thing that she has for her mom, the restaurant. And he just kind of went through how they changed their customer service process because they saw him and they know he's like a reviewer of restaurants. Oh,
I forgot the guy's name. The guy with the dread. I forgot his name. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
So it's like, that's unacceptable to me. You know what I mean? Because especially,
it shouldn't matter who he is.
Shouldn't matter, and then you don't know who you talking to anyway. There's millionaires walking around right now. You wouldn't even know. They're just whatever. So not that's they should be treated differently, but you still shouldn't treat people differently just because you have your own ideal about who they are, what they do.
Treat everybody the same, no matter who they are. That way you don't have to. You don't even have that issue. Yeah. I saw one of your a post that you had where speaking of customer service, you had a guy reach out to. He DM'd you and complimented you about how clean the seats at the stadium were, the Philly stadium were. How did that make you
feel? Give myself a clap for that one.
Yeah, because that's a great deal, because you never know who's watching, or because some people may not care when they go to an event. They just want to support their team. But to me, I do like cleanliness now, especially as I get older. I'm big on customer service. When I was younger, I didn't care. I'm just going in and get what I need. Now, cleanliness, professionalism, I like all of this stuff now. So And like I said, you never. And I tell people, be mindful of when you do work. Be mindful of what you post. Be mindful of what you do and how you carry yourself, because you never know who's watching.
Yes.
And this gentleman reached out to you and complimented you on
that
how
was
clean
incredible.
everything
I ain't
was.
going.
How did? Yeah, I was gonna say, how did that make you feel?
Oh man, it was a moment. It was definitely a moment. You know, because of course I have no idea, and I'm not even in Philly. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I know my people were doing good work, but you know I don't see them every day. I don't even see them really at all. And for someone to say that they've seen a difference and they got a new baby, and you know I kind of looked at his Facebook like this is his first kid, so you know you're on that like germs type thing when you have a kid, and it was like the fact that this person reached out and said thank you, like this I see the difference. That was a very incredible feeling. Like I'm very like I try to be very humble, and you know I don't share my wins as much as I should, but I felt really good about that one.
Absolutely, that's super important, because like I said, I'm big on that type of stuff. If it's clean, and it's crazy because my cousin, he just went to he was just in Philly. He went to the Eagles game. The Eagles in the Bills game this
right in the
past
same
Sunday.
quarter, yeah.
But when I just asked him how it was or whatever, he was like, man, he said he was nice over there. He said, nah, it's kind of Philly, it's kind of dirty a little bit or whatever. He did mention that.
We're trying to do that stadium. Look, tell him to give me somebody that he know, because we were trying to do that one as well, because people were complaining about the actual football stadium.
Mm-hmm. So. And then so one of the things, like just the town was kind of like dirty or whatever. So you know it's like that. So yeah,
that's crazy.
Yeah, we're definitely gonna have to figure out a way to
Please,
make that happen.
put me in, coach. Put me in.
Do you still have to deal with the Phillies though?
So the season's over, but yes.
So when it comes back around, man, that's a blessing, and that type of stuff right there, people can look forward to it, knowing you got people there. They gonna make sure everything is clean and to the T. So
they be working, yo. They be
always
working.
Be mindful of the work that you put in, because at the end of the day, even with doing interviews, like it's my name on the line. Like I don't want people to have a bad experience. I want to make sure everything is up to par.
Yeah.
And I tell people, even people think it's just setting up cameras and that's it. You go talk. Like no, I put a lot of work and preparation into it, because
my brother, I understand.
Like for you, I appreciate you taking the time to sit with me. So I don't want to take people to think I'm taking their time for granted, because you could be doing a lot of other things right now, but you're willing to take your time out of your day to sit down and have a conversation with me. I need to be prepared. So I'll make sure I have my notes. I know it's probably may have been we went over the time or whatever.
No, this is great. I told you I could talk all day. As long as I'm not in charge, we're good. We can do this all day.
But I tell people you have to take your craft serious, and I don't. And especially if I'm gonna drive 2 hours, a little bit over 2 hours away from my home, and then being away from my kids, like I take this serious. Like I don't want people to take. I don't want to take what I'm doing for granted, because my kids and my family, and then at the same time with you got kids, you got a family, you got a business, multiple businesses to run. Like I don't want people to think I'm taking their time for granted. So it's always, super important to, take what you're doing seriously, and it reflects on what you're doing as well.
Some people are not that dedicated though.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the things I tell people. Like you are saying you're doing these things, but you're not sacrificing. There's people I know who make millions of dollars. They make $10 million, and they have sacrificed all their kids' trust fund, their mortgage, their own, like everything, in order to make their business work. I don't know how dedicated. Like I've gotten to some really low points, but are you at the point where you won't pay your mortgage in order to pay payroll? That's like where you're like, oh, this is for real. Like I'm not just gonna say, oh, I'm not worrying about that. This is really happening. So some people are not that dedicated to where whatever, pick your own vice. You're like, I am going to be fully in this no matter what. I was working full time. I had an office, so close my office door. Do not knock. Do not disturb while I'm putting in bids. I was, like everybody has that moment where you're like, am I really doing this? Do I really want to do this?
Man, I tell people, I've even had days where, I remember one of the stories he told me, he had a lady that wanted a cake in Atlanta. He said he took a cake. I think she was only going to, he charged only $40 for the cake. He said, man, he just knew that she really wanted the cake. He said he baked the cake, took it down to $40. And he said the next thing he know, that lady told
one person equals 7 people. And he said
it just started snowballing. He said even on every first Monday of each month we do Men of Vision Bible study. And even on those days where he's closed, people still show up, even though he's closed, looking to buy cake all the time. Any type of dessert, cakes, ice cream, everything.
Wow.
But he said that's just a true testament to, being obedient, because he's like, I can't control. And he said, I'm just showing you that I'm putting my faith in God, because I can't control who comes in and buy these cakes.
Right.
I'm just showing God that I'm being obedient, doing my part, getting up every morning, baking these cakes, sending them in the stores, and knowing that I'm doing my part.
Yes.
God is sending the people to come in and supply every time. He's like, that's just, you got to be committed to the process.
Yes.
And
there's days where even if you're like, I'm done with this ish here, I don't want to do nothing else. And you still got to remember, like, I'm fortunate, and probably you're fortunate enough to where you're not always committed to something every single day.
Mm-hmm.
But then when you are, it's like showing up 100% for
Absolutely.
whatever, for whoever or whatever. I don't want to do site visits, and especially if they're going to tell me that I'm not going to get the job, you know what I mean? But I'm still showing up in my uniform, acting so enthusiastic about everything you're telling me.
Absolutely.
And, just in the back of my mind, they're probably not going to pick me. But, those things are what you have to do. And there's so many people that are not going to do it.
Absolutely.
And they were never like that anyway.
Mm-hmm. Man, and I tell people may think at times for me that I'm making a lot of money off of what I'm doing. Like, I've made money here and there, but it still hasn't been anything like consistently. But I still show up and do the work because I love the craft. And it's been times people will want to come do some stuff with me, but they're like, hey, are you paying? I'm like, bro, just come in and learn. I'm trying to, like, teach you, like, give you opportunities to, network and meet other people.
Yeah.
But I still just show up knowing that I'm taking away time from my kids. And it hurts sometimes when, like, I've missed football practices, football games. Daughter had school plays. And I've missed some of those things because I'm like, man, I'm putting in the work now, so it's going to benefit my kids in the long run. But
yeah,
I just want to show them it's not okay to settle. I don't want them to think it's okay to settle, so I still show up with everything I have going on, putting my best foot forward, and just put my faith in God, man. And I've had days where I was like, man, I don't know how this thing gonna work out.
Yeah, and you still showed up, so that's. And it goes to, sometimes people will say, I'm going to hire not all family members are bad, but I'm going to hire this family member, I'm going to hire this person and work with them when they were a piece of shit anyway.
Yeah.
You just make in your mind, you're like, I want to help all these people be this and elevate them to this. You're that way, but everybody else is not that way. Or they would only
everybody don't have the same drive. Yep.
Or there wouldn't be any workers, right? Mm-hmm. Somebody got to be a leader, somebody got to be a follower. I can be a follower, but most of the time I'm a leader, you know what I mean? And the same with you. So it's like people will try to bring people into something that they already know it's not for them. So, yeah.
But I try my best, especially I'm all about, giving people opportunities, especially if it's our people, man, I'm going to do my best. Do what I can, like.
So you still young, so you still got that like hope in your heart. Yeah. But people like me have been, and I still do it, but like that jaded feeling of like I've tried to get my sister over and over and over, and I'm like, when you're ready, if you're ever ready, I'm here, but I'm not gonna go forth and really drag you into something where you can potentially create your own demise.
I had a young man. Very first game of the season with the Hornets, I walked in there, and how you present yourself matters. Suit and tie, everything. People were just complimenting me on my suit and everything, and I was getting ready to head to my seat, and this young kid, I think he's getting ready to graduate from high school this year. He's like, "Excuse me, sir." He's like, "Can you do you have any advice that you can give me so I can be in your position one day?"
Wow.
This kid doesn't even know. I'm still learning a lot myself, but just being in a position, my presentation, and he sees somebody that looks like him. Because when you're working in the media covering like professional sports, it's a lot of politics that goes into that stuff, and you don't see a lot of African Americans covering the game. Like most of the time, you see us, we're playing the game, and the people that critique us don't look like us.
Yeah.
So for somebody to be in that position, it means a lot. So when he reached out to me, and when he came up to me, this humble kid, asked me, hey, can you give me some advice to how I can be in your position one day? Man, it just made me feel good. I was like, how can I even turn this kid down? Because
of course, right.
I know what it feels like to be in that position, and you don't know who you can turn to and ask for advice. So I'm like, man, I'm still learning.
With me. Let's talk.
Hey, we're going to talk. If I can't help you, I may know somebody else that can give you some information. Like, I'm not gonna turn anybody away, because especially
No.
for our people, it's already hard enough.
It's already hard enough.
So I'm gonna do everything I can. Now, what you do with the opportunity, that's on you.
on you.
The only thing I can do is just try to help you the best way I can.
For sure, and especially someone to be that young and know that they at least see something that they want.
Exactly.
That's not, especially now. I mean, these kids, you know, they have a lot more opportunity than we had, than I had. And I'm not even necessarily saying that I would be taking advantage of the opportunities if I was young at this time, you know, but it's like, I ask my kids, like my daughter's more entrepreneurial than my son. So I'm like, do you feel like you have too many opportunities? And they said they feel like they do. Like, they feel like there's just so many people doing so many things that you almost kind of withdraw and say, I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to follow this very narrow path where we would have begged to be able to be monetized on YouTube. Man, you know how many videos I would make if I was back in the day, like it'd be monetized on YouTube and that's all I got to do? Oh, please.
Exactly, yeah.
I would be a gazillionaire.
But the opportunities are there. And like I said, for me, I don't force my religion on anybody. I never do anything like that, but it's just me. For me, I just know God, it's not a lack of abundance, and God is going to always provide. So just because you see somebody in the field that you aspire to be in, don't be afraid to, you know, to try to take your chance, because everybody has an audience, and people may not gravitate towards one person, but they may gravitate towards the way you put something together. So it's always opportunities out here. Just take
just
advantage
be you,
of
and the only thing, you know, people just really this is like what does my son say? Like the world of cap. Like everybody's just trying to be somebody else, and it's just so hard to maintain that. It is just so much easier to just be you. If you have anyone who likes you ever, then you know that you are delivering something special about your personality. Just be yourself.
Absolutely.
And deliver that, and it's gonna work out. Your tribe will find you.
And I think that's part of the problem too. Is like with so many people posting like their wins, like you don't know what's real or what's not, because then you'll see people, you know, posting.
It's like, bro, I know you in real life.
Exactly.
I know you in real life. I know you sleeping on your mama's couch, and you're giving financial advice. I'm sorry, I can't rock with that.
Exactly.
Like I had a friend that was in Forbes, and she was literally being evicted. That's what messed me up. That's crazy. That is where my mindset changed. Like, this is all fake. It's all fake. And this is before I got into all this, you know. So I'm like, like I said, you can ask me anything, and you'll have the answer, because I'm not. It's so much easier.
And that's why I always tell people, I mean, you won't be 100% correct about everybody, but that's why I like doing face-to-face interviews, so you can get a feel for the person, you build a relationship with them. You still won't know everything about that person, but that's why when I do my research, I take my time, read articles and everything.
That's appreciated.
And then when you sit and have conversations with these people, then you can get a better feel for them. Because it's easy to just turn on the computer and do an interview and then, okay, thank you, bye, that's it. I like to, you know, build relationships and stay connected with these people, and you can tell how genuine they are when you finally sit down with them.
And then some people don't do well via message. You know what I mean? Like a lot of people feel like when they saw me, I was mean or rude or a bitch or whatever. And then they're like, you're so sweet. And I'm like, how did you not think I was sweet? But I guess my presentation can be a little bit different than what, you know, I am internally. So
perfect segue to get back to our question again, because we got all the way around the question, but this is where we left off at. But this is a perfect segue. Like that I was getting ready to ask you earlier is, being a woman of color, like, why do you feel, well, just in general, why do you feel people are have an issue with women being in those authoritative positions?
Oh yeah. I mean, I just think that every society, when it comes to women being in charge of anything, is always going to be questionable. Right. Like, is she being emotional, or she going to be, because you can either be passive or a bitch. Those are the two things. There's nothing in between. And so even as women, we do that to each other, where, you know, is she going to be this way or is she going to be that way? And so with that, it's something that was kind of put into us, and some of us haven't unlearned it. And some of us have experienced bad situations with women or women of color. And it's just like, the automatic thought is this. Now it may change after you work with them, talk to them. Or you might be right. She might be super, super passive to a fault, or she might be a B. So I think it's just something that we had to deal with, or you've dealt with actually, and we just lead with that.
Right. I always look at it like women are just like nurturers. Like they always, to me, they make things better. Like when I look at my mom, my grandmother, my daughter's mother, they always, make things better. Like if I need something, like even now, me being on the road, mom is there, making sure everything is good.
Right.
My daughter's mom making sure the girls are taken care of and everything. And even when I have my down moments, they just talk to me, pick your head up, keep on going. You're gonna be all right, And that means a lot to me, having women, in my life that are always supportive and, pushing me to be better. So I always look at it like it's a blessing to have that, but I know some people automatically think like women just can't do certain, which they're not as physically gifted as men, of course.
And I'm not gonna pretend like I am.
Right.
When I was in the Army, I'm like, I will not be doing that.
Right.
So I totally get that. But then you have a positive experience with women.
Absolutely.
Whereas if you got mommy issues, that can go one way or another. Even for women have mommy issues. I always say that mommy issues are worse than daddy issues. And so if you're a man or a woman with mom issues, then you just always have a way that you treat women, whether it's really you love women because you're missing that element, or you hate them.
That's a good point.
So
too.
it's there's so many elements to people's way of thinking, and they don't even know it. They don't know it themselves. So, but then, I guess I had like a sub in psychology, and so there's certain things that I'm thinking about or looking for when I'm talking to someone. Like, I can kind of see what happened a little window to the way they think. Like super clingy people probably have mommy issues. Like those little things, and that translates into so many other things. In the workplace and everything.
And it also, like, talking about that, it's like what you see from your parents or whatever. So like,
yeah.
For instance, like for women, when you see if your father's in your life and he's a strong father figure, when you see that, you like that's what you look for in a man. Same thing with a man. It's like when you see your mother doing all of these motherly duties, was cooking and cleaning and just being that backbone of the family. You look for a woman that's similar to that as well. It's like that's a strong mother figure that's gonna hold the household down and do those type of things. Like when you see, like you said, when you see that type of stuff, that's kind of like what you will look for. Not necessarily saying it's gonna always be that way, but when you have somebody like that in your life, of course you want something that kind of resembles that.
Yeah, and then you'll be that, because like my grandmother was always so. My grandma was always so strong, you know what I mean? So now you've raised me to be this aggressive woman, and I didn't even know I was aggressive until I ran into a man who was like, whoa, hold what you got. Like,
right.
Why are you being this way? And then now I'm like, oh, well, maybe I should adjust. So you're not even knowing, what you've been raised as, and if you don't have any males around and all those things. So all that stuff translate into, if I grew up with a father figure, maybe I wouldn't have gone to the military, and then the military is teaching me how to be a strong person, regardless of gender. So now it's like aggressive grandmother, then aggressive military, and then I'm in a male-dominated field, and then I'm in another male-dominated field on the business side. So by all intents and purposes, I'm supposed to be a total bitch, right? So it's like, all those things kind of feed into what you ultimately either are gonna be or you want to be totally opposite.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
These are gonna be my last 3 questions, and we'll get ready to wrap it up. Have you found a balance in like your work and your personal life, as far as like being a mom and take care of the family and being an entrepreneur? Have you found that balance? So
it's like a running joke in my little circle that the balance is no balance. So, there was always like, the work-life balance, because I was, I was working full times, and I was traveling probably 3 or 4 times a month with just my job. And then insert the business. I was traveling with the business, and then my daughter was volleyball, and my son was in football and basketball, and then everything else. Cooking. I was cooking 4 days a week. Like I was for real. Like I was domesticated and a business owner, and working full time and dedicating my mind to the Army. So I got to a point where I'm I'm about to lose it. Like, for real, I'm about to lose it, and I have to figure out what I need to do. And so it was really just one thing at a time. Like, schedule for me, what works. I guess because I'm naturally ambitious, I'm not a lazy person. So if you're by nature like a relaxed person, this may not work for you. But for me, like, scheduling everything. I'm talking scheduling the grocery store, scheduling, all the kids' events, and doing one thing at a time and being present in that moment for that thing. If I'm at work, typically I'm at work unless I dedicate half of my day to work and then the rest for me to BS around because everybody do it, right? So it's like really setting those things when they need to be set. That's really, it's not really a balance because I've missed gazillions of events for my kids. I've missed stuff for work and I've missed stuff for my business. Like something's gonna be sacrificed. Right. And then I'm very serious about my self-care. So I'm gonna get my facial, I'm gonna get my massage, I'm gonna get my hair done, I'm gonna get my nails done. I have to do that. So, it's just inserting those things because we all got time. We got time to scroll on Facebook, on Instagram, on TikTok. We got time. It's just all about like, how are you fitting it in? How you fit? I take naps. How you fitting your naps in?
Yeah, it's like I've always heard Shannon Sharp. It's this clip I saved in my phone. Is where he says the tight end for the Denver Broncos, Baltimore Ravens, the Hall of Famer.
Yes.
He's on First Take with Stephen A. Smith now.
Yeah.
But I always love listening to him, and I saved this clip in my phone when we were talking about balance, and he was just saying, he's like, there is no balance. He said, when you want to be great at something, there is no balance. He said, when you look at the greats like a LeBron James, a Kobe Bryant, Tom Brady, all of these guys sacrifice so much time. They miss recitals or anything, a lot of time with their family. But when you really want to be great at something, even business owners, you give up so much, because you're so committed to what you're doing. He's like, there is no balance.
Yeah.
So, like, when you really want to be great, that's out the window. You have to make the best of that time, but he said just forget about balance. Now he's like, it's nothing wrong with doing the 9 to 5, being there for your family and everything. But when you want something greater, or you want to be great at something, your craft, he said there is no balance.
Because you can't be regular.
Nope.
Regular is, like that 9 to 5 life, getting up at 7 o'clock, being at work at 9, getting off, cooking dinner and eating and watching TV. That's regular. There's no way you're going to get to the stratosphere that way. And that's totally cool to be that.
Absolutely.
But like you said, like when Kobe was coaching for his daughter's team, he had like a summer program. I was just telling my kids about this the other day. He had a summer program, and the person who was interviewing their camp was like, do you feel bad about the girls doing practices? I think it was 2 or 3 times a day. He said, what you mean? Like literally the whole neck jerk back. What you mean? Like I'm arguably one of the greatest players to ever touch the NBA, to touch a basketball. I'm teaching these girls to be the best they could possibly be. So why wouldn't they practice 3 times a day? What are you talking about?
Exactly.
It was almost like he was insulted. You know what I mean?
Because he knows what it takes to be great.
What it takes. So how can you even argue? Don't put your kid on this team. Like that's an easy out.
My mentor, Ben, the guy I was telling you about, because I play this interview all the time, and the thing it didn't resonate with me back then when we first shot the interview, but now when I go back and listen to it, he always says you can't be normal and great at the same time.
Oh man, that's great.
You can't be normal and great at the same time. So when you committed to something and you go all in, just understand it's gonna come with sacrifices, some things you may have to give up. He said maybe times when it's something that what you really need to do has to come before what you really want to do, like being with your family. So he said that just comes with it. And the more I go along, the more I see it. I'm like, man, it's crazy. I think I'm going to have to send you that interview because so many things that we talked, and this was 5 years ago, but it was so many things that we talked about in that interview. It still resonates today. And I'm like, man, he really said all this stuff was going to happen.
He was dropping those gems. And that goes back to the rejection. Like you literally have to be super grown in this process, you know what I mean? Like the rejection is just a small factor. Like that's probably out of 100 things, that's just one or two things you'll need to deal with, and you just have to know that everything is, like you said, being great. You have to be okay with everything, all the pitfalls, and even some people don't feel like they deserve to be successful, you know, and that's a whole other factor that you have to address. Like, can I really handle $400,000 a month?
Yeah, it's a lot.
Man,
I'm gonna let you talk about that as well. Why do you feel people may not? Why do you think people may not feel like they're worthy of certain like that type of income or anything? Why do you feel like some people don't feel like they're worthy, or even if they see something, sometimes they're like, man, I want to put in for this job or this opportunity, but I know I'm not gonna get it. I don't have the experience. I'm not qualified. Why do you feel like people may think in their mind it's like they're not worthy of certain
They have
things?
low self-esteem, and it could be low self-esteem for something nothing to do with that. So they just don't feel like, they literally feel like they're not worthy. So then you got to back that up and say, well, why do you feel like you're not worthy? Well, I got rejected for this camp when I was 8. And then it's kind of spiraled from there. And then you just chose not to go after anything else in life. And so now fast forward, you're an adult and you're still feeling that same way that 8-year-old kid felt. Just like when DMX, before he died, he still was crying about what his mother did to him when she put him in that group home. And this man was 50-something years old.
Still remember
that stuff don't change. So just because you're an adult doesn't mean that you just magically have the answer.
Right.
Like you just grow up and whatever hasn't been resolved is still lingering no matter how long ago it was. And then people they're afraid of whatever it takes to get to that thing. Like say, I'm not worthy of that job. I'm probably not going to get that job because when I tried to go to school, I didn't have the funds to go to school. So I never got that education. You know what I mean? So it's just so many elements that take you to this final thought. And then you get older. So it's like, well, now I'm too old to try to do that. Like I hear that from my mom, like I'm too old to even try to get a house. It doesn't matter as long as you still breathing and living on this earth. If
you tell yourself that, your words are powerful.
Words are powerful. Your thoughts become things. You know what I mean? And so, it's if you feel like you have never had that amount of money. Like I never had that amount of money until this year. You know what I mean? Like you talk about somebody who was like literally homeless. So how could I ever fathom having a $400,000 a month? That doesn't even, those things don't match. For all intents and purposes, I'm supposed to still be on that trajectory. And most people are. And you have to really say, I don't care. Like you have to have so much, IDAF in you in order to believe in yourself. IDGAF. He's like, nah, say that right.
Yeah, we're going to fix that.
IDGAF. About so much stuff in order to be successful, because everybody's gonna look at you crazy at some point, and you just gotta be like, nah, almost like ignorant, like la 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 la, I got this,
I think I'm the middle child, and I think I'm kind of like the one that's kind of like, I guess like a renegade. Like I like to do my own thing. Like, of course I listen to my parents. None of us, me, my brother, my sister, we all went to school, got our degrees, but I'm kind of like the one. It's like when I see stuff, I'm like, why does everybody think the same way? Like everybody is trained to like do the same thing. Like even when I worked outside, even when I worked at Costco, people would tell me, hey, you went to school, you got your degree, and they would say, man, you get a great job, you got great benefits, stay here, and that's it. Everybody would tell me the same thing, and I'm like, man, it's cool or whatever, but it ain't what I really want to do. Exactly, but majority of people, when you tell them that, talk to them, and you tell them you got a degree, or they'll say, man, you go get your job with great benefits and you just gonna stay there and save up for your retirement. But I'm like, if that's what you want to do, fine. But for me, I'm like, man, I would rather put my own future in my own hands and create my own opportunity doing something that I want to do, building something that I know that's for me. And once I finally walked away from my job a few months ago, I was there for 10 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I was there since my junior year in college. I was 21 when I started there.
Wow.
And when I left, it was just, when I hit 10 years, the only thing they gave me was a card. Thank you for your service. And I was like, that's it. Like, all right.
I mean, it's like I've always been an entrepreneur, like I kind of said, but you got to be like really insane to walk off your job. Like we're a part of this elite group of like aliens who are just straight like, I got this secure job, making enough money to survive. I don't want to do that. I want to go out to the unknown. And that is such a, like, there's literally got to be something different in our brain. And I love it because we can pivot too. You're not afraid to pivot. And that fear is the same fear that people have. I'm not worthy to get this job. I'm not even deserving of getting this amount of money. But you're like, shoot, like the sky's the limit. I already know what this is like. I want to see what this is like over here. And Nobody. That's like the entrepreneurs of the world and the ones who like invent and all these kind of things. Like they're gonna be totally different than those who are just like that comfortable setting.
Right.
Obviously.
And like I said, I'm big on my faith, and I never force it on anybody. But it had just got to a point where I was just waking up, going to work, and doing the same thing over and over again. And I just was agitated. I got tired of going to work. I didn't want to be there, and I just didn't feel like I was growing. And
think about all the people who think that same way every single day, and they never leave.
But they're afraid to leave. And a lot of people tell me, man, I wish I could do what you're doing. I'm like, man, you can.
Yeah.
And it was just like, and I would have subtle things like people like going to the covering different games, like working with the Hornets and cover South Carolina State. And even when I would go into these events, people would ask me, hey, who you work for? And I'm telling them, I work for myself. It's power in saying that. And then they ask me, are you hiring? So it's like, I feel like God is just sending people my way. It's like, I feel like I'm supposed to, help give them an opportunity and inspire them some type of way. Absolutely. But then when I would go back to work, it's just like I'm agitated. I'm like,
everything they say, you're like, what?
Yeah. And I'm like, I'm looking at all the work that I'm putting in, and the people up top are the ones who raking all the benefits. And I'm just like, and I don't mind being a team player, but I'm like, I know if I can do this for y'all, I can do this for myself
100 times over.
And it was just like I just felt like God was just making me so uncomfortable. It was like, it's time to go. It's time to go. It's time to go. And I'm just like, that's when you have faith though, because it's like, God, I trust you, but I don't know if I'm really ready to walk away from this stability and do my own thing.
Yeah.
But it's like, if you really committed to what you want to do, and you got your faith in God. Now that's faith when you can just walk away. And ever since I left about 3 months ago, like I had money saved up,
good,
and everything, and
that does make a difference.
It does make a difference, and I'm like, if I can always go back and get another job.
Yeah.
I got a degree, but it was just like everything about the job was just agitating me, and I didn't want to talk to people.
They said the wrong thing to you. You were like, what?
And so I was just like, it's time. So I had typed up a letter and everything, because I had. Back in the summer, I stepped down to part-time. Then I typed up a letter.
Wow.
And about my resignation this time. And actually, we had started bumping heads with management and everything. So it was crazy, because I kept telling people at work, I was like, man, don't get ready to leave. I'm about to be done. And I would just tell my daughter's mom the same thing. And she always said, well, when you're ready, let me know when you're ready.
Oh, that's dope, because that's not easy either.
So one morning, we kept bumping heads with management, and I'll be honest, it was times where I just woke up late and I ain't care about, or it been times where I would wake up and I would just sit there like, man, I don't feel like going. So the one morning I got up early that morning and I typed my letter. So the same thing that I did with my part-time, when I went from full-time to part-time, I put that letter up in my locker the first time and left it there for a day. Had a conversation with management, and it didn't go the way I wanted to. So I went upstairs, gave them the letter, said I'm stepping down to part-time. This time, typed up a letter that morning saying I'm announcing my resignation. Went upstairs when I got it, because I was like, I ain't sure if I'm ready to do this. Went upstairs, put it on my locker this time. End of my shift, they called me in the office. They were saying, hey, we just going to go ahead and part ways. Because I had already posted one of my letters online anyway, saying like, pretty soon I'm gonna be leaving my job. I know they got wind of it. Went in, put the resignation letter in my locker. End of my shift, like
they already knew.
And I was like, man, God, we ain't doing it this time. It's time for you to go. Since then, I left. I haven't looked back. And the people that I work with, they reach out to me, tell me they miss seeing me at work, and that's what I miss the most.
Yeah, that's the hard part too. Yeah, I can see that.
It was just like, I just told them, like, I just didn't feel like I was growing, and it was just time for me to do my own thing and just build something greater, because I know God has something greater for me. So I was like, it was just time to. And like I said, even when it was time for me to leave, that was it. Like, it wasn't nothing, like I didn't get nothing else. I just got that card for 10 years, but other than that, it's like, so. There's nothing wrong with having a job and being loyal to their job, but at the end of the day, whenever they ready to walk you out,
you a number.
That's it.
I mean, think about how many people, like during the housing crash and then during COVID, that like so many people reached out to me during COVID and was like, I got laid off, and they just were so shocked because they didn't know that they were expendable like that. You know what I mean? And that's a huge wake up call for people who are super like consistent in their life, and they now are like oh well, like we gotta cut the employees in order to save the business. You know what I mean? And so they're not looking at it from that aspect. They're looking like you just cut me out, and now I don't have an income. So.
And it can happen to anybody at any given time.
Any given time.
At any given time, no matter how long you've been at a job, whenever they ready to walk you out, that's it. And I'm not saying just up and quit your job or anything like that.
Because I've done that. I did that with my other business, and it went terrible. And so I was like, woo. Yeah. So the second time, I got to a point, and a friend told me this. He said, you're going to get to a point where you have to choose. Like, there's no way. And it wasn't anything to do with, like, how I felt about it. It was like, I cannot do both. And so I reached that crossroad. My boss wasn't trying to hear it. He was ignoring all my emails. I'm coming in his office like, I am quitting. Yeah. He was like, no, you're not. You're going to take my position. I had to go to HR to quit. So, you know what I mean? I've never experienced, of course, it had to be the time I wanted to quit. If it was any other time, it'd be different. But, I was comfortable in my decision. Just like you saying you're comfortable in your decision.
And what really, I got two more questions, but I got to say this. Please. What really pissed me off about the job was how I will look at how much stuff that I was doing for the job. I mean, I made good money as well. But I was just looking at everything that I was doing for the job. And then what rubbed me the wrong way is like, you want to put in a time off request, get some time off, and it gets denied. And I'm like, hold up, man, I done came in and changed my shift for y'all and worked these crazy schedules for y'all and doing all this and that for y'all and making extra moves when I don't even have to. But then it's like, the moment I need some time off, it gets rejected. I was like, nah. That really pissed me off. I'm like, man, I'm grown, man. Like if I don't want to come in, I ain't come. So that was another thing. So it got to a point where I was like, hey, I'm putting this in. I'm just letting you know I ain't gonna be here these days.
Whatever you want to do with
y'all
that,
do what y'all want to do. Same thing happened last year when I went to LA. It was an opportunity that came up.
Because you were still working at that.
Yep. Yeah. And something came up. It happened like a week before it was time to go to LA. And I tell them about it. We need you. We already got the schedule done. I'm like, well, my flight already booked. So I gotta figure it out. So flew to LA and it worked out. But it was just getting to that point over the last couple of years. Something had to be done different. I knew if I kept doing the same thing over and over, getting up, going to work, and just settling for the same thing, you keep getting the same result.
Yeah, and then you're gonna eventually resent everything, and everything that spills over into your real life too. You're gonna be aggy. You're gonna be aggy all the time. Yeah, that doesn't serve anyone well.
And my guy Troy, I interviewed Troy down here. He released a book a couple years ago. Shout out to Troy. He actually lives in Atlanta. I was talking to him probably about a month or so ago. So I've been thinking about it. He out here and he gives feedback to him. He's like, man, you're young. He said, do it while you're young, man. He's like, my goal was to do both and stuff in the music industry. My goal was to get a job and just maintain until I can go back to music. And 30 years later, he said, yeah, I have to get ready to retire from being a teacher. So hearing that type of stuff is like, people tell me, like, go forward while you're young and stuff like that.
And you already have it. It's not like you just moving out here like, yo, what's up? What y'all doing? Like, you already have something that you built. In Atlanta, like, I know people who I'm obviously not originally from Atlanta, but I've lived in multiple places. And there's people who are just moved here and move somewhere else and move back. Because they're like, I just can't run a business. They have a really hard time. Like, Atlanta is one of the easiest places to run a business. Like, you're gonna find your tribe. And that's what I really like too, is like, you're gonna have your group of people who do what you do and that want to help you and they want to do business with you and network with you. So I love it. I mean,
and that's what every time we honestly half the energy. Always feel like it's us. Everywhere. I don't like traveling. Other than that,
it's not LA or DC. Right. You know, it's like it's still gonna move, but it's usually if there's an accident or something. And they're building more roads and all that kind of stuff. So I don't even think the traffic is as bad as it used to be. So
My final two questions, and we'll get ready to wrap it up. Man, I really appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, this is great.
A great conversation.
Yeah.
My final two questions. If you could talk to your younger self, like, what would you say to the younger Sheena?
I've seen this question so many times, and I think maybe the only thing I would say, given how shy I was to just be more confident. I don't even, confidence spills into everything that you do. So that legit, that's it. Because I really feel like I had some kind of forward thought as a kid about something, not a clear picture, but I just never felt like, oh, I should have forgave myself or anything. I was always like, meh. I was just seemed like I was from somewhere else. But the only thing that I really had a problem with was confidence.
Absolutely. And then my last and final question that I ask everyone at the end when I'm on the road, it's part of our tour, the Cross the Line Podcast Self-Investment Tour. I love to ask everybody at the end, what does self-investment mean?
Self-investment means understanding your weaknesses, understanding your gaps, and really trying to figure out how to maximize yourself by filling in those gaps. Like if you know you're not good at something for yourself or for your business, then you need to hire out. You need to learn about it. You need to improve on it. Just making, without a monetary thing, making yourself better so you can be better to whatever that you're doing.
Absolutely. Sheena, thank you again for your time, man. I really appreciate this. Great. Well, drive, and I know we planned it, like I said, it took a few months to get everything situated, but I really appreciate it, and thank you for taking the time to sit down and have a conversation and share your journey. Because like I said, I feel like nowadays on social media, the only thing we see is the final product, but we don't really get to know the people.
Yeah.
And I think what they become along their journey is so important to as opposed to everything that they've acquired already.
Right.
So
thank
you so much for the time. Before we get out of here, can you tell everybody how to find you, and also even mention your
my course,
your course as well?
Yeah. So I'm on. What am I on? I'm on Instagram, Sheenapreneur, Sheenapreneur.com. Also, I'm on LinkedIn, Sheena Parker. I'm on TikTok, but me and TikTok got a love-hate relationship, but I'm on there. And my course is called GovCon Now, and I teach about federal contracting, local contracting, corporate contracting, and I also have a lot of stuff for my veterans. So I just teach you about how to utilize your business services and sell to the government, or if you want to start a brand new business, then you can figure out what you want to do in order to sell to the government or to a corporate agency.
Absolutely. Thank you again so much for this interview, Sheena. And definitely look forward. Like I said, so happy we were able to sit down and have this conversation.
Yes. Thank you so much.
I really enjoyed it. So hopefully everybody enjoyed this episode of the Cross the Line Podcast. Like I said, also thank you to all the supporters. Coming soon, we will be in LA. So thank you guys for that as well. So until next time, thank you. This is Cross the Line Podcast. Keep chasing your dreams. Thank you for listening.
Bye. Hey everyone, this is Sheena Parker, aka Sheenapreneur, and I am the founder and CEO of Foresight Industries, a facility management company, and also the founder of Sheenapreneur and the creator of GovCon Now, a federal, corporate, and local contracting course. And you're tuning into Cross the Line Podcast.